Book of Deuteronomy.
Yes, Your Grace, but Deuteronomy...
Deuteronomy is ambiguous.
Today, let's take a ride through history and explore the authorship of the Book of Deuteronomy. Now, for centuries, the traditional belief has been that Moses wrote the Torah, including Deuteronomy, under God's direction on Mount Sinai. This view has been foundational in Jewish tradition and was even solidified by Maimonides as one of the core principles of faith. However, modern scholars, both Jewish and believer alike, often take a different approach. Many suggest that Deuteronomy was written much later, possibly between the 7th and 5th centuries BC, during a time of great political and religious upheaval. According to this perspective, it was likely compiled by a group of Levites, priests who had vested interest in shaping Israel's spiritual and social life. So what was happening in Israel and Judah during this time? Well, around the 8th century BC, both kingdoms were under the thumb of a powerful Assyrian empire. When Israel rebelled, it was destroyed, and many of its people fled south to Judah, bringing their traditions and beliefs with them. One of these ideals was the exclusive worship of Yahweh, not just as the most important God, but as the only God. This belief gained traction among Judah's leaders, particularly King Hosea, who became king as a child after his father, Ammon, was assassinated. By the time Hosea was in his 20s, Assyrian control was weakening, and Judah saw an opportunity to reclaim its independence, not just politically, but spiritually. According to 2 Kings 22, Hosea's high priest, Hilkiah, discovered a book of the law in the temple, which many scholars believe was an early version of Deuteronomy. This book sparked a major religious reform, centralizing worship in Jerusalem and reinforcing loyalty to Yahweh. Then came the Babylonian exile in 586 BC. With Jerusalem destroyed and the people scattered, the exiled leaders reflected on what had gone wrong. They concluded that their downfall was due to their failure to follow God's laws. So, during this period, the history of Israel, from Joshua to Kings, was compiled to reinforce the ideal that obedience to God brings blessing, while disobedience leads to disaster. Deuteronomy was then positioned as the introduction to this grand narrative, presenting Israel as a people on the brink of entering the Promised Land, a fitting parallel to the exiles hoping to return home. Now let's talk about the Shema, one of the most famous passages in Deuteronomy. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. This passage became central to Jewish worship, and later, Yeshua himself called it the greatest commandment. He taught that loving God with our entire being and loving our neighbors was the essence of following God's will. So what does this all mean for us today? Well, whether we hold to Mosaic authorship or see Deuteronomy as a later development, its message remains clear. God calls his people to covenant faithfulness. The book is filled with reminders that obedience leads to blessings and rebellion leads to hardship. Yet even in the midst of failure, there's always hope for restoration. Life is a lot like riding a bicycle. We have the commands of Yeshua as our guide, much like a well-marked path. When we stay on course, we ride smoothly. But when we stray, ignoring the signs, we risk crashing. Yet even then, God, Yahweh, is there, ready to help us back up, dust us off, and set us on the right path again. So let's keep pedaling forward, staying faithful to God's call, and trusting Him to guide us every step of the way. Thank you for joining me as we continue our little ride through the Book of Deuteronomy. Shalom and happy riding.